Right. Welcome everyone to your first session of the virtual mini summit. My name is Chantel Eves, and I am one of the community connector coordinators on the Building Connected Communities project. We have been working on this project now for about a year and a half, and so we have learned some really incredible things throughout our journey together, and I'm here today to share them with you. So today we'll be talking about localizing impact with project design, development, and implementation. Community projects can be a catalyst for how people engage, connect, and commit to contributing meaningfully to their locality. The Community Development Learning Initiative is implementing this project, Building Connected Communities, or BCC, in partnership with 11 local grassroots organizations with funding from the City of Calgary. With support from CDLI, each organization is hosting a community connector to foster relationship building and deepening a sense of belonging using asset-based community development, or ABCD, the framework that exists and has been supportive in a lot of other communities. In this session, you'll gain insight into how the BCC project team has structured systems and designed approaches for navigating the complexity of operationalizing a short-term, deeply relational social project. Today, we'll share the approaches used in project development and team building while embedding decolonial practices into workplace culture. The BCC project is modeling the power of experiential learning, relationality, intentional connection, community contributions, and stewardship, all while centering meaningful local impact. For every gathering that we host, we usually go over creating an ethical space. Thankfully, we've covered that already in the opening of Mini Summit. So this will be in the presentation for reference in future when you come back to it. I included a photo of Fish Creek Park as part of my reflection and land acknowledgement. Whenever I go into the park, I just feel such a deep sense of belonging to the forest, belonging to this place, and just consideration too of the stewardship over the millennia that people have been here and caring for this space. So I wanted to start off the session with grounding myself in thinking about where I feel that I belong. So for introductions, it would be fantastic if you put your name, pronouns, organization, and community involvement into the chat. Also throughout the presentation, if you could please put your questions into the chat as well for the sake of the recording. And then on our final slide, we will address any of the questions that have come up as we go through the content. But yes, please, you're welcome to share with the group, provide a little bit of an introduction to who you are, why you're here. And we look forward to learning more about who's participating in the summit this year. So to start us off, I thought it would be helpful to dive into the core of ABCD. And the framework was created, what I've heard from other community members is to ground natural practices that happen between community members in something that can be translated for academic purposes or communicating to a wider group of folks who are trying to understand how community development can focus in on the abundance within community. So we have been really lucky on this project to get to discover assets that exist in community by investing time in learning what the strengths are, by connecting intentionally with folks, and really trying to understand like what helps people feel a sense of belonging. Um, and then organizing, part of that is leveraging the assets within community to enliven activity and engage people in civic life. So we all know that post-COVID, there was quite a bit of isolation experience by folks, and it took some time for people to feel comfortable again, coming back out into the world. And now I feel like we're at a really incredible point in time where people's interests, passions, skills, talents are wanting to be shared, and people are wanting to contribute and come back into the world with like a strong passion for what they care about. So throughout this project, these are some of the things that we've been focused on, and we've been supporting the community connectors and the grassroots organizations that we're partnered with to focus on so that they can be effective in their community efforts as well. We refer to this table quite a bit throughout our work with the connectors because if you're familiar with working in community, there's different approaches for engaging people in community in activities. And from my personal experience, consultation and facilitation have been like the primary ways that um, I previously engaged. So, either trying to understand what community wants by consulting them, by asking them what they think, or facilitating different types of programming to invite folks in. But what's different is that the asset-based community development framework or model is more focused on what community members are holding as their assets. So there's their skills and strengths, and finding ways to mobilize those things, to mobilize their ideas, to allow them to have leadership and stewardship in community, really not depending so much on funding to make things happen, but instead focusing in on all of the incredible abundance that already exists within community. Um, so we often come back to this table as a reminder that um, outcomes are different. The way that we approach things are different than consultation or facilitation. And they're more focused in on how we can engage community in a way that they feel empowered to do more. And so throughout this project, we've really encouraged the connectors as well to play that supporting role so that community members can take the lead and see their ideas to fruition with that support. So when the connectors are going out into community, these are the things that they're thinking of. The head, hand, heart model, or we call it the HHH model. So considering the skills that people have in terms of knowledge, the passions or interests that they have, and then also the skills that they have. So trying to identify each of those things so that in conversation they can uncover and discover what people want to do in community and how they want to do it. So starting with this component of the framework really supports them in coming into community and knowing exactly what it is that they want to contribute. And for those of you who are new to the idea of community assets, these are how we've categorized them. There is also the Tamarack Institute who has categorized them, I think, in a similar way to this. But for CDLI, this is how they've been grouped. So there's community assets of people, so the individual capacities that people have, the connections that happen out in community, so the exchange of assets that happens, the institutions, um, So the paid groups are professionals that exist in community and are there to support. And then also physical and ecological. So like resources, parks, the things that like feel a lot more tangible and places where people gather. And then there's also the association. So small, that's supposed to say informal groups with a community interest. So yeah, those are actually primarily the groups that we're working with on the project, or smaller groups of folks who are not huge agencies yet. Maybe that's something that they have a plan for the future, but right now they're grassroots initiatives that are really trying to gain their footing. Or our community associations, so people who are, that really strong volunteer base who are trying to create the initiative and community. Um, we'll talk more about the partners as we go along. So just for a little bit of context, the Built-in Connected Communities project started in 2024 with CDLI. So there was a call for proposals previous to that, and CDLI gained the project implementation component from the City of Calgary. So the City of Calgary is also at the same time working on asset-based community development as us within the internal departments. And we are out in community tandemly implementing this project to see what we learn on both sides. And also working very collaboratively together so that we can also learn from each other along the way. So these are the grassroots community organizations that we are partnered with on the project. The End of the Rainbow Foundation, Capitol Hill Community Association, Calgary Climate Hub, St. Andrews Heights, Shawnee Evergreen Community Association, Land of Dreams, Wings of Hope for Africa, the Otipisimuak Métis Government, Central Latino, Calgary Interfaith Council, and the Cameroonian Association of Calgary. So each of these organizations has a community connector embedded within, and they receive support from us, the project team, with guidance of trainings, a variety of different types of supports, including access to a small amount of funding so that they can empower community members to take action. And yeah, as part of the project, we have these incredible partnerships that have really been so cool. It's like very, very fascinating to learn about the complexity within each of these different initiatives. And um, I have found it to be really, really rewarding as well to work with such a variety of diverse interest groups. So I think one of the most fascinating things of this project is that we've been able to invite so many other folks in and share the experience with them as we go along. So I kind of spoke about the ways that this project came about. But I am kind of maybe needing to rewind a little bit also to project design, because this project really came about with a vision. I think that there were a couple of folks who were involved with CDLI who really thought like this could be something that we could do out in community that would not only help CDLI evolve as an initiative, but also enable us to connect more deeply within community and explore what it would be like to focus in on such a social relational type of project that could engage the network that was already existing with CDLI. So when those folks came together to design the proposal for the project, they had a really cool concept of considering the abundance within community, considering the context of Calgary. They also were really mindful that community can be defined in so many different ways. A lot of the time, we consider community to be neighborhood based, but there's so many different types of affinity groups that exist that actually give people a sense of community that they might not get in a neighborhood setting. Um, so that kind of redefinition of community was really embedded within the concept and framing of how CDLI would implement the project. Um, Also, the consideration of how communities really at capacity in a lot of ways, whether it be the poly crisis and all of the complexity that people are facing on an individual level, but also community projects are really dependent on different types of funding to implement the things that they want to do in community. And so utilizing this framework kind of shifts the narrative of like dependence on funding bodies to we have everything we need within community, and there's a variety of different ways that we can activate the assets in community. And so by embedding the ABCD framework, we're really seeing the ways that the community can utilize what they already have, acknowledge the strengths and assets that exist, and then deepen relationships because we have the opportunity now to see the strengths and not just the deficits. What's really unique too is that right from the get-go in the conception of this project, um, there was a lot of intentionality that we would come into this project with a decolonial lens, really focus on anti-racism, and also just like test out what's possible with implementing decolonial practice. And I'll talk more about that as we go along. But I think in terms of project design, if you start from that place, then it will carry through as opposed to trying to embed it later. So yeah, I found that that was really an attractive part of this project and why I wanted to be a part of it. Um, so in the proposal, there was a lot of focus on the grassroots organizations and providing the administrative and supervisory support from the project team for the people employed. And that's also a really unique piece of the project design. Just acknowledging that community is at capacity, that there's so many different things that are pulling people's attention away from community initiative. And for these small grassroots organizations to also have to consider the administrative components of having an employee, providing the supervisory support in kind of a formalized way, it can be really daunting. And then also there's the financial component of that and trying to navigate like how to keep the person employed. So within this project, we're really testing how it works for a project team that's separate from the grassroots organization to oversee the work that's happening in community, to support these folks, to help them get the training that they need, um, and kind of handle all of those things that can become a little bit taxing in the day-to-day for smaller organizations. And thus far, it's been going really, really well. Um, and so a lot of people in community kind of refer to the connectors time as paid protected time, because yes, connection is a very natural thing. People can be natural connectors and bringing people together. But those folks who have like the paid protected time, they maybe more have a little bit more capacity for considering the ways that connection can happen in an intentional way. And then that is again like an alleviation for the grassroots organization so that they can focus more so on what initiatives or strategic direction they're going in and the connector. is someone who has the time to work on bringing people together. So again, part of the design of this project has been in partnership with the City of Calgary and our colleagues on that side of the spectrum. And so this BCC logic model was created just to ground us in what we will have to input, the different types of activities, the outputs that we anticipate, and outcomes that we hope for, as well as the impact long term. So I think it's really helpful. And has been very helpful throughout the course of the project to have this to return to as something that just grounds us in where we are or where we want to go. Um, so yeah, I've been involved in a variety of different types of projects, but I think this is the first time where the logic model just felt like really, really clear. And so I have found this to be an incredibly supportive resource. And for those of you who are here and interested in designing a project, seeking funding for it, I would really highly recommend having something like this to ground you in what you hope to achieve and what impact you hope to make. Great. And so moving on to project development, as I was thinking about this presentation, I really returned to how like the conceptual framing happens during the proposal writing process. Like this is kind of a vision of how things might happen. But then when you get the project funding, and you start to apply the concepts, reality really sets in. Because sometimes like the landscape or the environment of how things are happening has shifted. Sometimes concepts, they don't really have a ground in reality yet. So you have to test what it would be like to implement. So I was thinking how concept and reality really result in adaptability. And so when we've come into this project and we've like really tried to develop the processes and systems to get things going, there was a lot of upfront work to create the foundation so that we could actually take the vision and turn it into something really, really incredible for the community. So part of that for us was in creating like a lot of internal systems because we're such a large team. I think there's 17 or 18 of us now. That we're trying to communicate with, share a huge amount of information with, and then also track our journey along the way. We just had to make sure that we had the systems and processes that would give us um, the organization that we needed so that we could be successful. So part of that at the very beginning is we created a SharePoint page. So internally within Caria, our fiscal agent for this project. Um, so yeah, we created that SharePoint page, and that has been like the landing page for us, where we store all of our information, where we post all of the upcoming events, where we document all of the different community of practice sessions that we come together for, learning series, any kind of communication that needs to happen within the internal group. Um, and then after that, we developed a handbook for the community connectors. So I think it ended up being like a 30-page document of just like what it takes to navigate the administrative system of CARIA, what it means to be a community connector, what the role is, like just really trying to give the connectors the opportunity to understand the role and the project on their own time. And then when we come together, we always talk through more so like what it is, but there's this reference point that we've created so that there's always a place that we can return to and keep updating so that um, are we've developed something so that they have that foundation and it's very simple for them to navigate the plethora of information that we've had to provide in establishing their roles. Um, yeah, and part of that too is like a huge need for stewarding relationships because we're not only an internal team, but we also have this external team of community host organization partners. And so a lot of the development work is included meeting with folks and really trying to understand their goals and their aspirations for being involved in the project. So as we've developed all of these internal things to establish our team and make sure that the project is set for success, then we're also at the same time trying to figure out what success means out in community and how we can navigate supporting that with the short amount of time that we have, as well as the resources that we have available. Um, so yeah, part of that is just supporting the ongoing development. Development, I don't know if it ever truly stops, especially with a project of this scale. There's so many different ways that we can keep improving, creating learning resources for our team, keep bringing people into this space so that we can understand more deeply what is happening in communities so that we can be responsive to that. Um, we often say we're building a plane in the air because we really just took off really, really quickly. And now, yeah, we're just kind of always kind of fiddling with the components and making sure that we've got the seats and we've got the refreshments and we've got a trajectory on like where we want to go and where we're intending to go. So there's a lot of moving pieces at all times, but it's definitely like part of the process of having such a complex project on our plates. And yeah, the patterns are like constantly shifting within the community too. So we have to be adaptable to that as well. So yeah, when we talk about the project implementation, we are often considering the different layers of complexity and then the depth of that complexity. Um, So the layers that came to mind for me in preparation for this were the diverse communities, members, and leaders, the complex realities of the polycrisis, limited capacity, time, energy, and motivations, the competing priorities that people have professionally and personally. A lot of people mentioned to me that they're doing things off the side of their desk. And so it's very relatable. Also have a lot of those different things that just kind of linger on the side of the desk. But yeah, there's always competing priorities, is what I'm trying to get at. Either the personal interest that you have in like committing to something in community, and then the things that are required of us. Um, there's also the existing structural or institutional barriers that we face, which are often systemic and often, easier to focus on than the strengths in community. And then there's this just growing and growing inequality. So, um, keeping all of those things in mind as before we go into community actually sets us up for deepening and understanding and compassion for people and really trying to understand that like community is reciprocal and we can't just expect that people are going to give and give and give, but how are we going to find ways to navigate these different layers so that we can create the depth of relationship and community? So part of that depth is nurturing the things that are intangible and really difficult to measure, like connection, trust, and belonging. Also diving deeper into like what it means to be anti-racist, what it means to decolonize the work that we do, and focusing in on those objectives so that we're not um, like just kind of filling them in, but that they're part of the approach and how we explore community. Um, and also the possibilities that exist within that. I think it's really exciting that like the conversation has shifted and grown over the years. I remember being in my early 20s and um, going to like anti-racism events and like feeling kind of defeated. But the more and more that we evolve together, like there has been a huge push for more inclusion in community and giving people more opportunity to engage. And I think that's where asset-based community development is really incredible because it isn't focused in on something that is negative, but instead like brings us into grounding in what's positive, what is working in community, what assets we do have, what is the abundance in community, and how can we lean into those things so that we can really leverage the strengths of community. Um, and then, yeah, part of the project implementation has just been this consistent need to embrace emergence. We don't know what's going to come next. We don't know what things are going to look like week to week. We don't know what's going to shift either out in community or within our organization or with relationships with folks. And so part of the depth is really knowing that we don't know what is going to happen next and just accepting that and also trying to maintain morale as we navigate the complexity of being out in community. And part of that is that it's evolving. All of our work is just constantly evolving. Our priorities might shift, our focus might shift a little bit, but we try to stay grounded in our responsiveness to community status and creation of new approaches and really inviting creativity and innovative ideas. We're hoping to continue doing that to the end of the project as well, because we really are testing the ground and testing how ABCD works within the municipality of Calgary. So this is the opportunity for people to share their creativity, to share their innovative ideas, and leverage what's existing in community so that we can validate and affirm that ABCD does work. Um, and for us, like a lens of that is inclusivity. We really want people to be actively involved in the work that we're doing. We want partners to feel like they can really participate in ways that make sense for their contacts within their organization. And that, communicating that is so welcome. Like we really want everyone to feel like this project is being implemented in an intentional way, that we're giving people the opportunity to be a part of it, and that those stories that are created in community, that are part of the narratives that bring positive attention to the communities that you're involved in are like really, really important. And this is a qualitative project. We're not highly focused on the metrics, and we're more focused on like what it looks like to navigate the relational complexity out in community and understand like where people are at and how we can support them in a strengths-based way. So part of that is um, knowledge mobilization. So we want in this project to share ABCD. We want people to first understand the key concepts, um, and then have an understanding of how they could implement them out in community, and how they can also celebrate the existing assets, collaborate with community members, and then apply the principles. So part of our objective is knowledge sharing within our team first and foremost, and then with the community host organizations. And then we have a variety of different ways that we engage the external community, including growing our ABCD practice, different ABCD 101 workshops, events that we host, including Mini Summit. We're sharing information on the website through different blog posts. So yeah, we're really just trying to create a deeper awareness and mobilize knowledge out in community of the framework so that we can hopefully see some positive impact in shifting the narrative over to a strengths-based lens. All right, and so activating strengths is really, I think, the primary objective of this project. We're trying to bring individuals, groups, organizations, and communities together to identify, mobilize, and leverage their assets for collective action. I really love this quote, and it just happened to be in the template of this presentation. So that was really easy for me. But if we know one another's gifts and are connected, new community opportunities emerge. So focusing in on connection, knowing each other, it helps us really ground in that, like, we have what we need. Community is abundant. Um, we don't really need all of these external inputs that we think we might. But that, like, yeah, we can do it on our own, and we can build networks of resilience through that connection and involve ourselves in civic life. Right now, that feels challenging because there's so much complexity. Um, but the more that we know each other, the more we connect, the easier it is to organize and meet the folks that care about the things that you do in community and, find that sense of belonging within that. Um, so yeah, for this slide, I really just wanted to talk about the decolonial approaches a little bit more because it's not commonplace, I would say. I haven't been in many work environments where this was such a strong focus of the work. Um, and I think what's incredible about CDLI is that the work has merit because action is associated with the principles that we carry and the values and mission that we are working off of together. And one of the primary things that attracted me to CTLI was we're all of these things. So having these ethical space and accountability agreements, like you saw early this morning, so that we're nurturing the conditions of safety and compassion in the spaces that we host, and really helping people feel comfortable to be themselves, to share, to like be in a heart-centered way. Um, I think it's really empowering when people feel that freedom, um, and just knowing that they can come into a space, share what they have to share in a respectful way, and that they'll be heard and acknowledged and appreciated for it. Um, so yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I really deeply appreciate about the spaces that CDLI creates and ones that we've been able to nurture throughout this project. Also meaningful land acknowledgements. So we really invite people to have a personal reflection so that they can experience reconciliation in real time. I think often land acknowledgements, they happen and it's a moment of time and it just passes and people don't get the opportunity to really reflect. And so we hope to open up the space so people can take the time and reflect in on what's meaningful to them when it comes to belonging to the land, to their reconciliation journey with the past and present. So yeah, I think that's another way that we're just engaging with decolonization. We really try to create a co-creative space in the way that we host sessions. So we host these different community of practices with the community connectors, and we're constantly inviting them in to either co-create the session, to co-host the session, to share their creativity, their stories, so that the narrative isn't just coming from the project team, but also from everyone else. And so that will help us in our reporting back to the city about asset-based community development and also hopefully creates like a sense of shared leadership as well, and that like we're all participating in the work, we're all contributing meaningfully to the work, and everyone's creativity is welcome. We also created these accountability invitations so that our our staff could choose supervision models. So the community connectors were presented with like an outline of what it looks like under a colonial supervision model and a decolonial supervision model. And it was really incredible conversations that we had about like previous experience and different roles and how like that would just like never ever come up. And so we really were excited to introduce this because it was, I think, liberating for all of us to understand that colonization is like alive and well in the systems and structures and the ways that we navigate the workplace. And in addition to that, we've co-created work plans and roadmaps with the connectors as well, so that we're leaning into their strengths and their interests as much as we possibly can, while staying within the scope and parameters of the role. But yeah, it's really been a great way for us to not only build relationships with the connectors, but also utilize ABCD internally within the project so that we're practicing what we preach out in community. And that has really resulted in, I feel, a lot of trust in the autonomy of each of the connectors so that they can go out into community and do the things that are most contextual, relevant to what the community needs. Um, and it's helped us build a relationship too over the course of this project, so much so that many of us never want this project to end. We just want to keep going and going. And I've heard many, many times from the group that this workplace experience and culture is something they haven't ever had before. And I think that that has been like really meaningful for me and very rewarding to hear. So yeah, we're really leaning into creating a sense of belonging within the project, so that we can go out into community and actually know what that means. And I think that belonging is still something that needs a lot more research and understanding, but there are people at the forefront really trying to understand. And I think it was Pilate that found this diagram, but it I really loved what it says here. At the core of belonging means ensuring that everyone has the right to contribute to the political, social, and cultural systems that shape their world. Um, and I think that's what we're hoping to do through this project is for people to feel that sense of belonging, to feel included, connected, recognized, and that they have a sense of agency, that they can do something, even if right now things feel like paralyzing to some extent. we do have the agency to go ahead and make a difference if we we feel that sense of belonging. I also just wanted to highlight these two little questions here. We've developed quite a few resources throughout the project. And if you're interested in those, like, please feel free to reach out to me because there's just too many to share in this presentation. But one of the things that we did is we brought together a whole bunch of different conversation questions. Um, and then we printed them and had this like little design. We laminated them, we cut them out, and then connectors brought them out into community. And so these were a couple of the examples. What would make it easier for people to connect and feel like they belong here was one of them. And what gifts or strengths do you bring to your community? And so these were created so that you could spark a conversation, either in a session that they were hosting, to bring it out to an event and like lay it out on the table. We also have like a giant Connect Four game that you can attach these questions to. So each piece that you play in the Connect Four game, you can ask each other a question and just nurture those connections through curiosity, really, and like really just trying to deepen understanding of each other. And I think, as part of the longer term outcomes or impact of this project is really nurturing this culture of connection and belonging. Um, it's there's so much to this project, but I often come back to this being like one of the primary objectives, and like everything else is part of that, like all of the different work of the design, of the development, of the implementation, like it's all part of the connection and belonging. But if we can say that some community members really did get a sense of this, then I would feel pretty successful in the work that we've done here. Um, but yeah, I think these are just some of the final thoughts that I had uh, as I was reviewing the presentation, and um, how implementing ABCD has very difficult to measure impacts because success is relative, contextual, and ever evolving, or as we say, emergent. And so each community is going to have like its own little bubble, its microcosm of culture of connection and belonging. And so for us, like to translate those narratives and make them tangible is like part of how we nurture this culture, um, because the way that we tell the story tells the story of the culture. Um, Relational capacity can be built, but requires stewardship from the community. So through this project, we've really tried to nurture the communication, collaboration, and building resilience with connection. Um, I think the resilience of a culture is based in that like people are able to do that without feeling like polarized or division. So I think this project has like really been successful in developing that relational capacity and giving people opportunities to connect in a consistent way over a period of time. Like even the community host organizations that have come together just naturally, organically to collaborate has been a really cool feature of the project. Culture is a co-creation, and that kind of speaks to the knowing one another, inviting each other in, and finding ways to contribute meaningfully. Um, and we can only really do that when we have an openness and readiness. But that trust is built over time. And we've really recognized in this project and having a little bit more time than some of the shorter term projects that I've been on before, that like we can say that we've engaged in relationship and we have explored ways for people to contribute in the ways that make sense for them. Belonging is a feeling. And so, how do you track a feeling other than through story or narrative? But it's really grounded in experiencing things together and a willingness to stay in that relationship. And so I think of some of the examples of the connectors like book club, cooking, youth groups, climate action groups, all of these spaces, they're just, these little gatherings of people coming together, maybe 10, 15 people at a time, but they're experiencing belonging because they have something in common and they're willing to stay in relationship because of that common ground, but also because every time that they get together, they're deepening that relationship and exploring the complexity of being in relationship together. And finally, connection grounds us in belonging. Remaining connected nurtures engagement in civic life and reminds us of our inherent interconnection to people and place. So yeah, throughout this project, um, to date, like we've really been hyper focused on how interconnected we are. Like even if we feel like we've fallen into our different silos, um, ultimately, like we're all connected to nature and are embedded in this ecosystem and this place. Like we all have an affinity for this place, whether it's like where we grew up or it's where we call home now. This is our home, and we're trying to make it a better place through asset-based community development, and we're all connected in that. So an ABCD reflection that I would like to present is how can I apply ABCD? Discuss, discover, connect, and productively mobilize assets from within, activating essential functions citizens collectively perform to enhance community well-being. So it all starts with dialogue. It starts with conversation, and then we can discover each other's strengths, and we can connect over those strengths, and then eventually leverage and mobilize those assets from within the community. For the ultimate goal of community well-being. And then I'd like to present a future reflection, considering either a current or future project. How will you localize impact? I know there was a lot here, but maybe something from this.
Sorry about that, folks. It looks like we got pulled back. Chantel, do you want to finish that last couple of sentences? It sounded like you were really just wrapping up.
Yes, I was. So yes, overall, thank you for listening to me jabber on about project stuff. It's my specialization, so I can definitely nerd out a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to learn about what I had to share. And I didn't get the opportunity to check the chat or see if there any questions had come up throughout. But yeah, if you do have any questions, like please feel free.